everyone, I'm Randi Larson from the Generative AI Innovation Center at AWS. We're capturing the raw, unfiltered conversations that tell you what the what is when it comes to AI. In this episode, we're dropping into London to expose the true cost of cramming your business into off-the-shelf AI. If you've been tracking the evolution of AI, you've seen it. The tech keeps getting smarter and the models keep getting more sophisticated. So the real question for business leaders is, how do you make AI work for you as opposed to around you? But if you're in the business of precision and you have a unique brand voice or tone, or you have some highly specialized data, an off-the-shelf model probably isn't going to cut it. Any of us in our everyday lives have specific needs and we probably want to choose the right tool. Otherwise, you could find yourself lining up at an ATM and asking for wealth management advice. But here's the thing, ATMs are great at dispensing cash. They're awful at retirement planning. So rest assured, we're going to dive deep into all things custom artificial intelligence. I'm Randi Larson from the Generative AI Innovation Center at AWS, and I'm joined by Pullen and Hannah Marlow. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm Ali. I am a co-founder and CEO of Cosine. We build bleeding edge coding agents specifically targeted to large, highly regulated enterprises with legacy code bases.
Excellent. And Hannah?
Yeah, I'm Hannah Marlow. I lead our model customization program within the Innovation Center. And so what we do is we work closely with customers to help them figure out the use case, if they're going to need customization or not, and then also embed deep applied science and engineering resources with them, with their data, to help them build really relevant, performant AI.
So Hannah, I want to start with you. You guide companies of all sizes, through the spectrum of fine-tuning all the way through scratch builds. Give us the basics. Like, what is model customization? And when it's done right, what can business leaders expect?
Yeah, so we are a global team and we work with organizations across domains. We get all kinds of different use cases, but really what I think universally these organizations are looking for models that speak with their brand language, have better performance, align with their business and kind of domain and expertise. We see, I would say, a lot of times we're looking to kind of optimize. We really take an optimization lens around this. And so you're typically looking at alignment and overall performance of a model. And then also, in a lot of cases, this is kind of a next step for organizations that are looking to maybe increase efficiency. So think reducing cost or reducing latency. And so when it's done right, you're getting this kind of optimal result that kind of aligns with you. So for instance, Volkswagen, they have very distinct, when they generate images, it's really important that it aligns to their very distinct kind of brand guidelines and image.
Sure.
And so off-the-shelf models are not going to do that, right? And so it's taking your data, the things that differentiate your business, and really baking that into AI.
Okay, I like how you kind of position it as that next step for producing more efficiency. That's really helpful. And so, Ali, Cosine is putting up some pretty stunning numbers, somewhere in the neighborhood of 250x in productivity gains for developers. Mm-hmm. I mean, what exactly is that about? And tell us more. Is it about one model? Is it multiple models? Give us a look beneath the covers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 250x is a big number to put out there.
Yes.
It sounds big. It's a bold number.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for that and the way that we achieve that is obviously through model customization, but it's mainly through the model being tightly coupled to the rest of the product, which is super important. And as a whole, allowing for a lot of parallel workloads. That's how you get a number like 250x rather than just 20, 30% incremental improvements. The way that we build our product and deploy it allows developers, particularly in large enterprises who are highly regulated, to parallelize a lot of the work they would otherwise have to do serially. And as a result, when you can do your entire backlog in one go, you're able to just per unit time do so much more. And that's how we have arrived at these crazy productivity gains, both for ourselves, but more importantly for our customers.
Sure.
Where we have depending on their use case and their stack and the languages they use and so on, have built them custom models, custom coding agents, which in many places they wouldn't be able to deploy at all because of their infosec requirements. And not only are we able to actually service that need, but we're then able to like customize models specifically for the type of tasks that their engineers are doing day to day. And that going that extra mile is how you get that level of productivity gain in these kinds of organizations.
Okay, that's clear. So, of course, then it sounds like your clients, of course, are all sort of the poster children, if you will, for highly customized models.
Yes.
Of course, it's not really a question of whether you pursue a customized model, but to what extent, right? Is it personalized for you?
Yes.
Okay. So then, Hannah, I want to flip the switch or flip the script a little bit for you. Real talk here. When or how often do you have to be kind of the bad guy and tell your customers, you know, a custom model probably isn't the right bet in your case? And kind of what does that reality check look like?
Yeah. So I would say our group is very nice to work with, and we're not really usually bad guys. Yes. But we do pretty frequently redirect organizations that are coming to us. So the Generative AI Innovation Center team overall. So this was launched in 2023, really to accelerate customers on AWS who are developing Gen AI solutions. It's the whole team doesn't only focus on custom model, right? So there's a ton of different use cases, and a lot of them you can grab an off-the-shelf model, do prompt engineering, do retrieval augmented generation. Our team is kind of a specialty group within that, and we have seen, you know, like I would say the folks that we see that are customizing, it's not the first time they're building something with generative AI, right? It's not, they usually already have, they've done their prototypes, they have things going into production, and they're like, okay, here's a gap, or here, I think I'm leaving something on the table in terms of performance or efficiency. If we have somebody come to us that just says, I want to build, you know, like, I want a custom model. I want a branded model.
Right.
Then we always start with like, well, okay, why? What's the reason? What are we working backward from? So our team has a lot of hands-on keyboard applied scientists and ML engineers that work with customers to do these builds, but we also have dedicated generative AI strategists. And so it's their job to kind of go in and figure out, okay, what is the business outcome? Like if we build this, does it go into production? Is it kind of an experiment? And so that's where we really want to make sure that we're working backward from something and that it makes sense versus getting too wrapped into like which technology are we going to use and like what, you know, like getting just to a custom model for the sake of it. Okay.
So often then it's they've been working in AI, it's not their first rodeo, but maybe they have an inkling that they need to have something a little bit more, fine-tuned, to use the term of art, but to have something a little bit more specialized, right, for what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah, so you can think about, you know, a company like Robin AI, right? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to bake in legal domain expertise, and they needed to do these really specialized kind of tasks and whereas, and then, you know, Athena Research Center is building models that understand Greek and Greek culture and those kind of things. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to build into models that's really differentiated and not going to work super well out of the box. I would say another very common use case is maybe you did a prototype or you built something with a very large kind of do-it-all model. But then in actuality, what you're trying to put into production is a little bit more task specific or like the breadth is not as much there. And so we have a lot of organizations that are doing like knowledge distillation and kind of baking some of the knowledge for their specific domain and use case into a much smaller, faster, and cheaper kind of a package.
Sure.
With the rise of agents in agentic systems, that has definitely been growing a lot, right? So you might have an orchestrator model that's much bigger, more performant, able to do lots of things and manage these different agents, but not every agent needs to be huge, right? And for like for the sake of latency, you don't want don't want them to be very large.
It's a trade-off.
So and it really depends. And so it's a very custom question, right?
And then sort of what are the levers I'm going to use in this particular case?
Yeah. And what data is available.
And what data,
Yeah,
right.
that's a big key part of it as well.
Huge part of it.
The data is so important, right? Like I would say the bulk of the time that we spend on any project is going back and forth with the data, right? Like obviously we're trying different models, we're trying different approaches, but so much of the quality of the result comes back to the quality of the data and how you line up the problem. I don't know if you would, I think you guys have probably seen some of that too.
I completely agree. No, I think that especially with customizing models, people get hung up on the wrong things. Fundamentally, you can get your hyperparameters very wrong. You can get like so many things very wrong, but so long as the data is correct, you will still get like a reasonable output. Right. A lot of people start from the other direction, but fundamentally, we've seen, and in some occasions when we're building models for customers, we have to deal with like quite a small amount of data because it might be incredibly niche. Like we've built models that are doing Verilog for like chip manufacturers and stuff like that, and there isn't a huge amount of that out there on the open internet that we're able to train on. So in that situation, we've been surprised where actually even throwing all of what we have at the problem isn't actually the optimal solution.
From a technology standpoint.
Exactly, and being much more deliberate and opinionated on what is good data and what is bad data has gained us more performance despite actually having less of it.
Yeah, I would say we definitely see that too. Better to have a well-curated, smaller set of data. Like sometimes we'll talk to organizations and they're like, I have a ton of data.
Right.
We're like, yes.
Good problem to have.
We're like, yes, you have a large volume of data, but like, what is the data? And like, is it actually aligned to what you're trying to do? I think the other thing is the evaluations are so key, right? For most of the problems that we're working on in kind of the customization space, it's not like an off-the-shelf benchmark that we're trying to improve against. For a lot of like what we see, the foundation models have already been kind of like aligned to try and beat those leaderboard metrics, right? And so we're not going to like go and try and like do that, but it's more like we're trying to, make the model follow the style and tone of your organization, right? And then you need to know, well, how do you measure that? And like, what does that look like? And how do, can we use another model as a judge of that? Or do we have to have human evaluations? Usually it's kind of a mixture. Sometimes it might be like more of a classification problem or like something that you could grade, right? Like a multi-choice quest, like a multi-choice test. You can figure out if the model answered the right answer. And so that's a big part. It's just figuring out what are you trying to achieve and how are you going to measure that? And then that sets you up a lot of the way because then anything you get as a baseline, that's now you can do a champion challenger and say, all right, can I improve the performance of that? Can I keep the performance but decrease latency? Like that gives you have to have that starting point to work from.
Sure. So it's like good compared to what, right?
Yeah,
and you need to establish that up front. So all this talk of data, Ali, is making me think a lot about, your clients in particular in highly regulated industries, knowing that, there's governance, there's security, there's compliance, there's, VPC considerations. So tell us about the conversations that you have when it comes to, you have a business leader that sees that flashiness aspect of AI and they want to get going. And then you're like, well, wait. There are some considerations here. So how does that go?
Yeah, so I had one of these conversations this morning, just before I came
Coincidental.
here. Coincidental,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
So it was with a very large defense company. As you can imagine, with us, the three broad categories that prevent an organization from rolling out a more like off-the-shelf solution as a sort of coding agent are some sort of government regulation, some sort of InfoSec, or IP worries.
Right.
Essentially, they don't want any of this to egress or any of their information to egress their organization for one of those reasons.
Of course.
And when companies come and talk to us, because we are able to deploy into either a VPC or on occasion fully on-premise, there are a lot of questions that get raised. A lot of it around actually, is your solution truly truly air-gapped and truly like deployed into just our infrastructure as it phone home in any way. But once we've got beyond that, then the conversations become centered around like, hey, we've seen all of these other tools that like we can't use. How analogous are you to them? Where do you match up on the evaluations, as Hannah mentioned? And also then comes often the killer question, which is like, hey, we have a use case in mind. The code base is like 25, 30 years old. It's mostly in the head of one guy who's retiring.
Naturally.
How can we use your tool to sort of like lift that load and actually make that a productive code base again? We get a lot of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I guess with these large organizations, they come to us in search for a solution that can actually be deployed in their highly regulated sort of environment. And once they've established that, then they're asking for all the bells and whistles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's always tricky. I can imagine where it's like you want to be able to, whether it's for an agent, like replicate, a certain workflow, or in your case, like make use of the data, but it's not digitized, let alone on paper. I'm sure that's
yes. I mean, some of these code bases don't even use Git, which is something that we didn't anticipate up front. So you start getting hit with a lot of these kinds of questions, and over time our product will develop and become much more holistic in like, oh yeah, we have seen that once before, so we can deal with that. And every additional customer that we talk to, in this occasion this morning, they actually want a VPC deployment, which is great. So we can do those deployments much more quickly, and we can deliver them, highly customized models, but like in their cloud. In this case, it was AWS, which is great.
Oh, good.
And in those situations, it means that also when they want custom models, which they often do on top of the custom agent that we already have, like that iteration cycle is much faster. We might be able to reach into their organization and use some of their data to train on their own code bases as well. We often get asked as that. Similar to Hannah, that's always sort of a last resort. We try to avoid doing that as much as we can, but in certain situations
it's
with
necessary.
Truly niche languages and use cases, you have to.
Okay. So Hannah, I want to go behind the scenes a little bit of the custom model program. When you see customers investing heavily in model customization, there are a lot of learnings, of course. But if there was to be kind of that one preventable failure that you've come across, we were like, we've just done that one thing a tiny bit differently, it might have been a different outcome.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the organizations we work with are already, they're looking for insight and guidance. I would say one of the things is like, we already talked about working backward and having kind of the evaluation that you're going to use. That's like step number one. I think the other one too is like taking incremental steps. And so maybe by the end of this, you do need to make your own foundation model. But like that's pretty rare. It's pretty rare that you have to like make your own new foundation model
from scratch.
Yeah, but some people kind of think that they might need to start there. And so, I'm a big believer in only adding complexity when you need it, right? And so,
Smart.
Start with prompt engineering, start with RAG, and then, as you're moving into like, okay, we actually do need to modify the weights of a model, start with like parameter efficient fine tuning, right? Like a low rank adapter kind of fine tuning. You need less data for that, and the type of data that you need, you can probably use again if you do a deeper set of stuff.
Sure.
And so I would say, starting with something like a fine tuning, and even reinforcement learning before you jump into like, do we need to do continued pre-training or like more and more, right? The other nice thing about starting kind of at that higher level is it's also, a big part of what you want to develop is it's not going to be like a one and done thing, right? The space evolves so quickly. New models come out pretty frequently. And so one of the nice things is if you can get your pipeline, you get your data in place, you get your pipelines in place, you get your evaluations in place, really the model can be a pretty modular swap out at that point. And so think about ways to not over rely on the foundation model that you're using, but have all that other stuff around it so that you can kind of continue to iterate and experiment and kind of evolve with the landscape, right?
Interesting. And that's coming from the head of the custom model program.
It's such an engineering thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where I guess engineers may have a tendency sometimes to go for the most complicated solution because that's just what engineers do. I've been guilty of doing it before as well.
Yeah.
But it's rare, I guess, as you say, that you actually need to do a lot of those things.
Right. So it's like get the fundamentals in place first.
I mean, we always like at all the first conversations we have, everybody wants to make sure like you do reinforcement learning and continued pre-training and you know how to do like all these deep and then but where you start is like usually at a more simple approach, which is not a bad thing, right? No. Like that's actually the ideal state if you're if the training or tuning that you're doing is more efficient. And like we see a lot of customers that can do something like a model distillation approach, which is not super intensive in terms of like the data or the training that you need, but still can save like 10x on their inference costs and latency, right? And so when you think about, that's why a lot of the customers that we see they're already running something and then they're trying to scale it more. And so like finding, that might not matter so much when you're experimenting, but it totally matters when you're in production, right?
Oh,
like that, you don't want to leave things on the table.
We've had to do so much model distillation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most common things, particularly because you often get large enterprises who don't have many GPUs, which is always a fun one because they want the thing and they're willing to pay for the thing. And then they're like, we don't really have much to run this on.
Critical piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not for obviously VPC, but for on-prem, And in those situations, we find ourselves distilling a huge amount.
Okay, so then for a lightning round now, guys, I want each of you to weigh in. If there were to be kind of that one piece of advice or just a few pieces of advice that you could give executives listening or anybody listening to eliminate the headache as they start their AI model customization journey, what would that be? I
guess knowing exactly what you want out of the other end. I know that sounds like such a wishy-washy answer.
No, it's important. The business case up front, the business case up front. Like, what is the thing you're trying to solve? And it's something that we do a lot internally as well before we go ahead and go on these like odysseys of having to do some fairly like crazy things to try to get performance. And we have to think, okay, like at the end of the day, what is this getting us as a business? Smart.
And really thinking backwards from that. And obviously incredibly important for a startup, but important for anyone. Like, what is the shortest credible path of getting there?
I like that.
In a way where I'm not going to incur tons of technical debt, but I need an MVP first. We need to try it against the evals. We need to know where this leaves us and what the next logical step will be. In so many cases, I think both on like an enterprise level and on a startup level, people see shiny things and do them for the sake of doing them. And that's okay from an experiment perspective if you're a large organization with a research department that can afford to do that. But in many cases, you have to really bring it back to like, what is the thing I'm trying to bring into the world here and work from there.
Yeah, great point. Hannah.
+1 to all of them. Yeah. No, I think Ali said all the big ones, right? It's like knowing what you're going to build. I think the other thing too, maybe this is a little bit maybe too practical and strategic, like for the big picture, but remember that a lot of what you're doing is to run this thing like for inference, right? And so when you're weighing the cost and energy required to go into, if you're going to customize a model, think about like, what are you going to invest in the beginning? And then how long is that model going to be in production? What does it cost to run it in production? What scale are you going to run it in production? And then you're going to like, that gives you something that you can put on the scales to kind of balance against. If this is something that you're not sure that you want to run long term or like you don't have a use case for, like that's an easy thing of like, maybe this is not the time. But if you've got something that you are starting to scale up, you're putting it out to all of your users, it's going to drive a ton of traffic, it needs to be super low latency and amazing, then that investment makes a ton of sense. Something
we see a lot of is organizations who are very excited about AI, and like rightfully so, but they're trying to play like 4D chess and try to see like, okay, so we're building this solution now, but we know the rate of change. So let's try to like bake everything in and let's try to make sure that, anticipate what's going to happen next. And we don't want to do this now because this might happen in the future. where do you sit on all that? Because what we always say is, listen, like the solutions now will still be useful in like 6 months' time, right?
It's a balancing act because you don't want to build something that you don't know what you're going to use it for, but you also don't want to get that to keep you from ever building anything.
Yes.
You also want to avoid going so like feet first into something that you're not going to see results from it for a year. Like that's also not a good thing to do. So figuring out something that you can do that's iterative, that brings you value quickly, and that you can also like test quickly, and if you need to, fail fast and like pivot, right? And so I think that's the balancing act that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I never knew that model customization could be so fascinating, truly, and how intuitive it actually is. You know, when you think back to the basics of having your house in order, you know, with good data and all the fundamentals, in place. But I want to thank you both for breaking this down so eloquently and for spending time with me today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.